Welcome back to the daily Living Jewish Kitzur Shulchan Aruch class. We are beginning a brand new section of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Let us see where we are up to. We are up to section 72. We begin the section of Shabbos, and we'll speak about the sanctity of Shabbos and preparing for Shabbos. Just to get a wider picture, we've gone through the course of the day, and now we move on to the course of the week. We've gone through the 6 days of the week of living Jewish, living as a Jew as we go through the day, starting the day right, and davening and learning something and behaving ourselves and eating and making brachos and going to business and saying Shema before we go to sleep. And before we know it, it's almost Shabbos. Tomorrow night is Shabbos. Let's see how we can make Shabbos all that special. So Shabbos is a big section of halacha. There's a lot to discuss about how to observe Shabbos in the best way possible. There are actually 72, 82, 92. There are 24 chapters of discussions on the laws of Shabbos, but we've broken it down one topic at a time. The very first section that deals with Shabbos of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is section 72, and as I mentioned, we speak about the holiness of Shabbos and preparing for Shabbos. And then we'll slowly get ready for Shabbos. These chapters deal with leading up to Shabbos. The next section will speak about traveling into Shabbos on a boat, and then lighting our candles, and then eventually we'll move into the special mitzvahs of Shabbos, making kiddush, having a Shabbos meal, and then the other things which are special for Shabbos, like reading from the Torah and the maftir. And then after those first initial 8 sections, we'll move into things that we should avoid. So the first while we'll speak about getting ready for Shabbos, and then we'll speak about forbidden neighbors, things that we should not be doing on Shabbos. We'll speak about the Erev, or carrying animals, the idea of muktzah, which means not handling certain items, how to handle sick people that need treatment that often seems like it might be conflicting to the Shabbos law, and how we work our way around that. Childbirth, a little more about Erev, and finally we'll finish Shabbos with a bang with concluding prayer of Ma'ariv and Havdalah. So that's what we have in store for us. The next approximately 20 chapters that go through all the different dimensions of Shabbos, but we'll start with a discussion about Shabbos in general, and from there we will move to each of the different mitzvahs of Shabbos and the prohibitions, what we avoid in Shabbos. Halacha number 1. The Holy Shabbos is the great sign and covenant which Hashem, the Holy One, blessed be He, gave to us. So this is a special covenant, a special sign, a special pact that we have between us and God, something that Hashem has given us, that is up to us to remind the world and remind ourselves that in 6 days Hashem created the heavens and the earth and all that is in them, and abstained from work on the 7th day. And this, my friends, is the foundation of our faith. The foundation of our faith is belief in God. And the foundation of our belief in God is that He created the world in 6 days, and He rested on the 7th. And so every Shabbos, when we observe, every week, when we work for 6 days, and then on the 7th, we rest, that is a special covenant, a special gift Hashem has given us to charge us with the responsibility of upholding this fundamental, foundational belief that God created the world. As you'll see, it's written in the Kiddush. When you're holding your cup of wine and making Kiddush on Friday night, what do we read? we read the passage of how Hashem worked for 6 days, and on the 7th day he rested. Our sages of blessed memory say Shabbos is equivalent to all the mitzvahs. Whoever keeps the Shabbos in accordance with its laws, keeping Shabbos doesn't just mean going to have a family time, family dinner. It means try to do it all, try to do every dimension of Shabbos, or as much as we can. Whoever keeps the Shabbos in accordance with its laws, and whoever achieves keeping Shabbos, is regarded as though he fulfilled the entire Torah. Let me ask you a question. The Torah says don't gossip, right? The Torah says don't cheat your partner in business. The Torah says don't scam people. You're going to say that by somebody keeping the Shabbos in his entirety, it's as if he didn't scam people when he did, or it's as if he didn't gossip when he did. Well, does this mean that it's equivalent to keeping all the mitzvahs? I don't know what other answers are out there. I'm sure there's great answers, but the answer that comes to my mind is that if we keep Shabbos in our entirety, it means that we focus on doing what's right. It means that we focus on our neshama, on our connection to God. So if we're going to keep Shabbos in its entirety, then not automatically, but that comes along with that, the responsibility to do all the other mitzvahs too. If a person is scamming or lying or robbing or whatever else he may be doing immorally, then he's probably not keeping Shabbos in its entirety. He might look frum because maybe he doesn't get into a car, but to keep Shabbos in its entirety means to have a strong, solid belief in God and what he says. So the same God that says keep Shabbos also says don't hurt somebody. So yes, if somebody is focused on keeping Shabbos in his entirety, it's as if he did all the mitzvahs, because it means he's plugged in. He has his value system right. It sets him straight for the rest of the week. Take it or leave it.
That's a really good point.
Thank you. Conversely, whoever desecrates the Shabbos is like one who completely denies the whole Torah. Wow, that sounds like a strong statement. I didn't make it up. It comes straight out of the Talmud. Somebody who breaks Shabbos is like he denies the entire Torah. Why? How could you say that? He's such a good person. He does so many mitzvahs. He gives lots of tzedakah. He helps people. You're going to say that by breaking Shabbos, he's denying the whole Torah? But when we understand the significance of Shabbos, how much of a foundation Shabbos is, then if somebody will intentionally break it, he's just undone his whole core fundamental principle, his beliefs, and it puts everything else in jeopardy. So it's worth mentioning right away now that each of us are on our own journey, and we can't do everything in one shot, because otherwise we'll collapse. Our body won't be able to handle it. It'll have a reverse effect, a negative effect, adverse effect. So we continuously grow. Somebody who grew up in an environment where Shabbos was not in the home, so if they're not keeping Shabbos, it's not that they're rejecting it. It means that they haven't yet developed the willpower and tools to be able to achieve an amazing achievement of keeping Shabbos. So there is this concept today of somebody desecrating Shabbos. He's referred to as a tinok shenishba, as a child that was taken captive by the nations, where the child knows no better than what the native people are doing. And so today many Jews are referred to euphemistically as taken captive children, meaning that they're not decisively deciding to reject their beliefs. It rather means that they've been influenced by their environment. So this is certainly not about judging anybody, but it is about recognizing that Shabbos is a foundational pillar of Jewish belief. And therefore, somebody who does desecrate the Shabbos, not because they haven't yet learned how to keep it, but just because they disregard it, then it's equivalent. They've just undone their foundations, and at that point, it's like they've desecrated the entire Torah. And so it is said in Ezra, and you came down on Mount Sinai, and you gave your people righteous judgments and true laws, and your holy Shabbos you made known to them. So we see in the prophets how the culmination of all of the good that Hashem gave us was the Shabbos. The Shabbos represents all of the mitzvahs. Keeping Shabbos brings us to keeping all of the mitzvahs, and breaking Shabbos is considered as if we violated all the mitzvahs because of the foundation, how much of a foundational core part of Judaism, of our relationship with Hashem, Shabbos is. Now, if that didn't sound bad enough, we've got to say things as they are. So those of you that are just here for inspiration, I apologize, but this is, after all, living Jewish. And when we live, it's not all rosy daisy. So here we go. Anyone who desecrates the Shabbos publicly is considered as a non-Jew in every respect. Wow. How do we understand that? Let's first finish reading and then we'll discuss. If he touches wine that wasn't mevushal, that wasn't cooked, you're not allowed to drink it. The bread he bakes is like the bread of a non-Jew, cannot be eaten. The food he cooks is like the cook of a non-Jew, which also cannot be eaten. What does publicly mean? In the presence of 10 Jews. And it's not necessarily that he actually desecrates the Shabbos in the presence, but even if he does it in a public way that he's comfortable with 10 Jews knowing about his desecration. That's considered public. This law is derived from the Talmud and Poskim. The Talmud asks, was not the incident of Queen Esther public knowledge? The pre-regarded rule that publicly means in the presence of 10 Jewish men, or when the desecration is public knowledge. Let's just dissect this for a moment. We've just said in the very second halacha that somebody who desecrates Shabbos is considered as a non-Jew in every regard. Is this maybe the source of the term where people say, this guy, I don't know if you could call him Jewish, look what he does. This is not the Hasidic perspective. And there's no argument, there's no contradiction. We look at things in different contexts. Hasidus speaks about our relationship with Hashem. It speaks about our neshama. And therefore Hasidus teaches that a Jew can do every sin in the book. You could be a murderer, a ganaf, he could everything wrong, and he still has a neshama, and he's still a Jew. Well, as the sages say, Apal Pishachata Yisrael, who even though he sins, he's still Jewish. We cannot revoke our Judaism. It's not just a citizenship, it's something that is in our DNA. It's not based on our DNA, it's in our spiritual DNA, it's in our neshama. So once a Jew, always a Jew. So from a Hasidic perspective, somebody who publicly just desecrates the Shabbos is a Jew in every regard. But Hasidus is not arguing with Jewish law. The law is the law. The law is speaking about on a practical level. And the law is saying that if a person is not keeping Shabbos, if they're not keeping this core fundamental priority of Yiddishkeit, then for all practical purposes, they're like a non-Jew. It means that they're basically disregarding the Jewish practice. And therefore, if they're disregarding the Jewish practice, then maybe they're serving an idol. If they're serving an idol and they touch the wine, so the wine becomes not kosher. Why is it that non-mevushal wine touched by a non-Jew is not kosher? It's because it's very possible that the non-Jew serves, whether it's Hinduism or Buddhism or Christianity, if the non-Jew believes that there's another source of power in this world other than God, that's idolatry. And that rips at the core of our identity. And so therefore, if a non-Jew was to touch the wine that we drink, wine that wasn't yet mevushal, and he had an idolatrous thought, it would make it non-kosher. In fact, we don't even know what he's thinking. And so therefore, Jewish law says, as we we learned about a couple of months back, that any wine that's not mevushal, that wasn't cooked, that was touched by a non-Jew, becomes not kosher because he may have had an idolatrous thought. So for all practical purposes, the Jew that doesn't keep Shabbos in the way that I've just described, not because he doesn't know what Shabbos is, or he hasn't yet mastered the art of keeping it, but because he rejects it, means that if he's rejecting as fundamental a foundation for the Jewish people as Shabbos, then it's a statement that he rejects all of Jewish law. And then we don't know. Maybe he's also rejecting the law of belief in one God. Therefore, there's no contradiction. When we talk from a halachic perspective, from a practical perspective, we say that a Jew that breaks Shabbos is considered as a non-Jew in every regard. Practically speaking, it means that if he's willing to intentionally undermine such a core fundamental obligation and requirement of every Jew, so that it means that we don't know if he's doing anything because he's already broken something at the core. But that's on a practical level. Chassidus says, even though if he sins, he's still a Jew, his neshama always remains. So even if he breaks Shabbos and even converts to another religion, if you wanted to call that. So has he had a negative impact on himself? Absolutely. Is his conduct something that has room for improvement? Big time. But his neshama is intact. It's pure. So the point that I share is that when it comes to judging somebody, then it's not our job to validate or invalidate people. We need to accept everybody for who they are. And so when it comes to judging people, we look at the neshama. We say, regardless of what you've done, I accept you. I don't accept what you've done, but I accept you. If you're going to ask me if what you're doing is okay, if it's at odds with the Torah, by no means could I ever condone it. But are you okay? 100%. You're neshama. You're pure. You're good. So this statement that we just saw of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is for practical purposes, for legal purposes. Right? If somebody wants to be a witness under a chuppah, they need to keep Shabbos, because if not, Shabbos is so fundamental a core of Jewish practice that if that's not in place, we worry that all of his other Jewish practices also may be not in place, and therefore he won't qualify as a witness for the wedding. That's on a practical level. But on a judgmental level, he may have the greatest of all the Shabbos. He may be doing incredible good. So it's definitely a very sensitive topic, and I hope that I've been able to address it as much as I could to the best of my ability. But the take home from this is Shabbos is it's incredible. It's tremendous. Being able to keep a Shabbos is really the bedrock of Jewish practice. And so I encourage all of you to take that next step to keeping just another minute of